Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship to order. Happy Sunshine Week, folks. Here we are. It's the time of year when we celebrate more sunshine in our lives and in our government. But while we may be getting a little more sunlight every day, Washington still seems to be in the dark. The government demands to know exactly how much money all of you earn so it can tax every single cent. Yet once Washington gets its hands on your money, it's anyone's guess where it is even going. For the past 2 decades, the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act has required government expenditures to be publicly available on a searchable website, usaspending.gov. This website is invaluable to the oversight work I do every day, tracking how taxpayer dollars are being spent. But tens of billions of dollars are intentionally being omitted from the site every year. Another law passed 15 years ago requires Washington to make an annual list of programs describing the cost, purpose, and results of each program. Turns out government agencies don't even know how many programs they are running or if they're accomplishing their stated goals. More than 2,600 programs have been identified to date, but that doesn't include foreign aid and defense programs, which haven't been tallied yet. If Washington doesn't know how many programs there are and if they are actually working, how can the government guarantee your money is being spent properly? Simple answer is it can't. Folks, without transparency, there is no accountability. That's why I've authored a number of laws to shine more light on Washington spending. And as a result, today, agencies from the Small Business Administration to the Pentagon must put public price tags on projects paid for with your tax dollars. A similar law applies to funding from the Departments of Health and Human Services, Education, and Labor. This information is intended to allow taxpayers to decide for themselves if the price is right. Here is an example of how SBA and taxpayers are supporting the work of our friends at the Iowa Center Women's Business Center. These folks are helping women who are trying to start or grow a business in our state, where women now own 43% of all businesses. As you can see from the price tag on the center's website, taxpayers are providing $150,000 of the cost to make those services available. Shouldn't every taxpayer-funded program, project, or product provide a similar price tag? Unfortunately, even where this transparency has already been promised, it isn't always happening. For example, right here, the Navy sunk tax dollars into conducting octopus hypnosis. But you'll put yourself in a trance reading through the results, trying to find the cost. Why? Because it's not included. The Army is spending taxpayer money on monkey mind reading, but the cost is anyone's guess. Well, I'm sure we're all looking forward to learning what's on the minds of monkeys. I already know what's on taxpayers' minds. They are fed up with Washington hiding how the money they worked so hard to earn is being spent, only to learn it's being wasted. Well, folks, sunshine is the best disinfectant for discouraging wasteful spending. That is why I appreciate SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler for quickly getting her agency into compliance with my COST Act. While the Pentagon has been required to disclose the cost of research and development projects funded with tax dollars since 2021, the previous administration did little to make that happen. I am announcing today that the department's Inspector General will investigate the matter so taxpayers won't have to resort to mind reading or hypnosis to find out how defense dollars are being spent. One thing I've learned during my time in the Senate is there is more to making a law than just passing a bill. Oversight is absolutely essential to making sure the law is carried out. And effective oversight requires access to information. I want to recognize the hard work of the offices of Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office for assisting my work and standing up for taxpayers. I also want to express my deep gratitude for the work of Open the Books and the White Coat Waste Project, who turned transparency into real-world results that benefit all of us. I've learned the hard way that exposing inefficiencies and fighting waste doesn't make you many friends in Washington, D.C. So I salute you for your thankless work, and I extend the gratitude of the taxpayers in Iowa who could not have better friends standing up for their interests in Washington. Before recognizing the ranking member for his opening remarks, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record statements from nonprofit taxpayer watchdog and transparency groups in support of more openness in government, including Citizens Against Government Waste, U.S. Right to Know, the National Taxpayers Union, and we'll enter these into the record without objection, so ordered. And I now recognize Ranking Member Markey for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, so much. And I love the name Sunshine Week. By the way, I'm the author of the law that moved daylight savings time from the last week of April to the first week of March. So we took the hour of daylight from 5:15 in the morning and moved it to 7:15 at night. So for the last 2 weeks, you've been going home, and it's daylight out there. It's sunshine. And you're welcome, everyone, because we know that's really the beginning of spring when the hour is in the evening and you can go home in it. And that's kind of my gift to everyone, that smile on the corners of your mouth that turn upwards, knowing that you're going to be able to go home. You can start playing soccer or softball or taking your walk or gardening because it's there. Now, as opposed to that, the Trump administration has said that their administration is the most transparent in our history. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth because this administration loves darkness. They want it to be 5:15 in the morning, at all times, where people just can't see what is going on. And in the past year, the Trump administration has spent all of their time operating in the shadows, operating in darkness, purging essential programs, disappearing databases, firing nonpartisan federal staff, including those that respond to Freedom of Information Act requests. This administration has tried to silence the truth, ban facts, coerce reporters into staying silent. And just this past weekend, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, or as I call it now, the Federal Censorship Commission, he threatened to revoke broadcasters' licenses over reporting on the Iranian conflict. So it's an illegal war in Iran. Isn't evidently enough for the administration. It now seeks to wage an all-out war on reality. Don't report on the skyrocketing energy prices. Don't report on all of the casualties. Don't report on the fact that the Straits of Hormuz are now shut. Don't report on that. And now even Joe Kent, the administration's top counterterrorism official, who has some problems of his own, but he couldn't stomach the lies and resigned yesterday in protest. More often than not, we do not hear about this administration's actions straight from the horse's mouth. Instead, we learn about these actions after the damage is already done. So at best, it's unacceptable. At worst, it's a deliberate series of cover-ups that benefit Trump and his MAGA minions, not the American people. So last month, thanks to court filings, we learned that the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, employees agreed to turn over sensitive Social Security data to a right-wing political advocacy group, peddling conspiracy theories of voter fraud. Last week, thanks to a courageous whistleblower, we learned of allegations that a former Doge employee put millions of American Social Security numbers and sensitive financial information on personal thumb drives, intending to share them with his private employer. And recently, thanks to a lawsuit, we learned that Doge employees asked ChatGPT to choose which federal grants were so-called DEI and should be canceled. No steps to prevent bias or discrimination were taken. Just write an algorithm and just send it throughout the federal government. Figure out who deserves and who doesn't deserve a grant. This is a deeply flawed process that Doge employees used to cancel 1,400 National Endowment of Humanities grants because the grants specifically addressed women and minorities. Bad algorithm, bad outcome for women and minorities. None of these grants were secret, nor were they controversial. This is not an open and transparent government. Instead of shining light on actual waste and fraud and abuse, the Trump administration is once again playing political games and leaving the American people in the dark. No sunshine, no transparency. We still don't know what Doge did at the Small Business Administration because the committee has never been briefed after repeated requests. If this administration was serious about transparency, it would not conceal information about the donors for Trump's $400 million gold-plated ballroom. If this administration was serious about ethical spending, it would not have allowed Kristi Noem to spend $200 million on 2 private jets for herself and $220 million on an ad campaign. If this administration was serious about fiscal accountability, it would have halted the record $95 billion end of fiscal year spending the Pentagon blew through last September. Those taxpayer funds weren't for services, service members' salaries and benefits. The Pentagon swiped the taxpayer's credit card to pay for deals with outside contractors, giving $6 billion to foreign governments and foreign-owned businesses, and buy high-end luxury items like furniture, including a $100,000 grand piano. That's not music to the ears of the American people when it comes to transparency and accountability. The administration that believes in transparency should welcome oversight, and it would be opening its books, brief this committee, maintain the independence of inspectors general rather than purging its ranks and replacing them with hand-picked MAGA loyalists. Oversight is not obstruction. This committee has a responsibility, regardless of party, to demand answers on behalf of small businesses and working families we represent. Congress and this administration must flip the switch, shine sunlight wherever waste, fraud, and abuse exists. And I look forward to today's hearing with this great witness panel that you have assembled.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ranking Member Markey. I did not know that you authored that bill.
Yeah.
Thank you. So some people would argue against you, but I'm totally okay with it. So thank you.
Most of those people come from farm states.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your open-mindedness because I had to hear over and over again from farm state senators how cows operate on God's time.
Yes.
And I used to tell them, cows don't know what time it is. Okay, just move the hour, wake them up later, and they'll still get the job done. But it was fascinating to learn more about farm state and their relationship to.
I don't know any cows that wear watches, so I don't think it matters to them, but thank you. I do want to extend a warm welcome to all of our witnesses, and I am thankful that you took time out of your busy schedules to share your expertise and insight with our committee today. I will now introduce our first witness, Mr. Justin Goodman. Mr. Goodman is the Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Public Policy at White Coat Waste, a nonprofit, nonpartisan government watchdog organization. He is a subject matter expert with over 20 years of experience investigating, exposing, and stopping government waste. White Coat Waste was the first to uncover that Dr. Fauci funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and I've been honored to work with them to try and stop unnecessary and cruel animal research. Next, Mr. John Hart is the CEO of Open the Books. With a mission to put every dime online in real time, Open the Books is the premier government spending transparency organization. Before joining Open the Books, he served as the communications director to the late U.S. Senator Tom Coburn, where he worked on landmark transparency legislation that put federal spending online. His work at Open the Books includes oversight reports on improper payments, government waste, and exposing COVID fraud. Our third witness, Mr. Jeff Arkin, is the Director of Strategic Issues at the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, in Washington, D.C. Mr. Arkin oversees GAO's work on federal budget issues, states and localities' use of federal grants and other financial assistance, and the quality, transparency, and usefulness of federal spending data. He joined GAO in 2002 and spent over a decade leading reviews of tax policy and administration. His work for GAO identifying ways to improve tax compliance resulted in billions of dollars in additional federal revenue and other improvements to the federal tax system's operation. And thank you again for being here. I now recognize Ranking Member Markey to introduce his witness.
Thank you so much. And I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Joshua Miller, who serves as Congress Watch Director at Public Citizen, where he leads a team advocating advocacy on AI, healthcare, financial services, taxes, and government oversight. He previously served in investigative and legislative roles working with Congress and multiple inspectors general, including supporting oversight efforts at the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Oversight and Reform. His academic and professional career has been impeccable and centered on executive branch responsiveness to the needs of all communities and strengthening transparency and accountability in government. So we welcome you, Doctor.
Thank you. And now we will go into opening statements. And first, I will recognize Justin Goodman for your statement. Now, I'll explain the lighting system in front of you. Green means you're good to go. Yellow means you have a minute left, so start wrapping it up, please. And then red means time to conclude. So with that, Mr. Goodman, you are recognized for 5 minutes. Oh, did you press the top? Yeah.
Should have been listening. Good afternoon, Chair Ernst, Ranking Member Markey. White Coat Waste's mission is to find, expose, and defund government animal testing, which costs taxpayers roughly $20 billion each year. We believe taxpayers have a right to know how their hard-earned money is being spent so they can hold their government accountable for wasteful spending and animal abuse. I'm honored to testify today about how transparency tools, though imperfect, have helped us identify and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse in programs funded by the SBA, NIH, and other agencies, and even spare dogs like rescued lab beagle Oliver behind me here from painful experiments. Some of our work with Senator Ernst shows exactly why transparency is so critical for congressional oversight. In 2022, using federal spending transparency databases, White Coat Waste uncovered how Dr. Fauci's division of the NIH awarded a $1.8 million small business innovation research contract to develop a seasonal allergy drug. We suspected it funded animal tests, but because of deficiencies in reporting requirements, we had to submit a FOIA request for more details. The FOIA records confirmed that the NIH-approved SBIR contract budgeted for a series of drug tests on 6-month-old puppies. The FOIA records also revealed that the company admitted internally that the NIH-funded dog tests were unnecessary. We shared the documents with Senator Ernst's office and we're very grateful that she fired off a letter to Dr. Fauci. Within weeks, he personally responded. He admitted that the NIH reviewed and approved the SBIR contract for dog testing. He also stated that the dog tests his team greenlit were now being canceled following further scrutiny. In fact, the drug reached human trials without any testing on dogs. Using tools like FOIA and USA Spending, we literally saved puppies. More recently, using the same transparency tools, we uncovered that wasteful SBIR spending on dog testing is widespread. We identified at least $86 million in SBIR funding awarded by the Trump NIH to drug companies for other unnecessary testing on dogs. Unfortunately, it is impossible to pinpoint the total amount because of disclosure deficiencies on federal databases, as the GAO has documented. Still, we've shown that in these SBIR-funded tests, puppies as young as 3 weeks old are being injected with and force-fed experimental drugs. Some are even injected with fentanyl, cocaine, and have their skulls drilled into. Tens of millions in SBIR funding continues to be wasted on dog tests, even though the FDA has stated, quote, it does not mandate that human drugs be studied on dogs, end quote. And FDA Commissioner Marty Makary has stated, quote, why are we testing every single drug on dogs, usually beagles? It's sad and it's unnecessary, end quote. This wasteful SBIR-funded dog testing persists even though Senators Paul, Booker, and Schiff enacted a law in 2022 removing the FDA's outdated animal testing mandate. White coat waste investigations have also exposed Trump NIH officials' numerous false claims that they stopped funding beagle testing and have prompted bipartisan congressional calls for action. Taxpayers are so upset about the NIH's deception, they're flooding Secretary Kennedy's phone lines. Instead of thoughtfully responding to public concerns about NIH-funded beagle abuse, yesterday, HHS defiantly changed one of its phone messages to play a recording saying, quote, thank you for calling Domino's Pizza, end quote, before sending taxpayers to voicemail. Torturing puppies with our tax dollars isn't funny, but people at HHS apparently think it is. Many SBIR-funded companies wasting tax dollars on dog tests have also violated long-standing transparency laws requiring them to disclose their federal funding. Documents White Coat Waste obtained through FOIA show that one biotech company started and run by Moderna's billionaire co-founder recently received a $1.2 million SBIR contract to test an experimental weight loss pill on dogs. It also violated the law by not disclosing this funding. This is why we need Senator Ernst's Costs Act. Another transparency success story is White Coat Waste investigation that exposed and prompted President Trump to end taxpayer funding for the Wuhan lab. Our FOIA requests and lawsuits secured records showing that NIH and USAID did fund gain-of-function animal tests in China that Biden and Trump agencies both say likely caused COVID. Senator Ernst and others have had to go to great lengths to compel agencies to release records that the public has a right to see under the law. The records we obtained also support Senator Paul's allegations that Fauci lied under oath when he denied the funding, and the Biden HHS even cited the documents when it debarred Wuhan's lab partner EcoHealth from federal funding. Our investigations have also identified potential COVID fraud by EcoHealth, NIH's foreign beagle supplier, and others. In closing, Sunshine Week reminds us that transparency is not an abstract principle. It is a practical tool that protects taxpayers, strengthens oversight, exposes waste, and can even save puppies. When the government turns on the lights, waste and abuse have nowhere left to hide. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goodman, and welcome to Oliver as well. It's great to have him here, so thank you so much. Next, I will recognize Dr. Miller for 5 minutes of testimony. The floor is yours, Dr. Miller.
Yes, thank you. Chair Ernst, Ranking Member Markey, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Joshua Miller, and I serve as Director at Public Citizen, where our team works to strengthen government accountability and expose corporate corruption. I also have fond memories of working with this committee while advocating for small businesses at one of the nation's leading CDFIs, helping entrepreneurs access responsible capital, especially during PPP. Before that, I served in investigative and legislative roles at GAO and several Inspector General offices. In those roles, I worked with Congress to strengthen housing support programs and evaluated fines and penalties for foreign corrupt practices, money laundering, and sanctions violations. I also provided investigative support on white-collar criminal cases and helped facilitate the data necessary to find missing and exploited children and violent fugitive felons. And finally, I'm a political scientist with an expertise in unitary presidential power and the institutions that make our government work most effectively. All of these experiences will shape my testimony today. Like many Americans, I'm deeply concerned about the blatant and rampant fraud and corruption we're seeing in the federal government today. This president walked into office focused on dismantling oversight, immediately firing 17 inspector generals, and over 75% of appointed IG roles are still vacant. This was shocking because inspector generals are not just there to track dollars and cents. They uphold the health, safety, and well-being of the American people. It was the inspector general's office that took action to protect children from lead exposure and subsidized housing. It was an inspector general's office that uncovered failures to protect our troops exposed to toxic burn pits. It was an inspector general's office that uncovered failures to protect our troops' body armor and discovered FEMA's trailers with high levels of toxic chemicals. And it was an inspector general's office that uncovered nursing homes failing to manage dangerous infections. So when the president fires inspector generals to hide his corruption, the real impact will not be felt here in Washington, D.C. It will be felt by the American people. But it's not just the firing of inspector generals that is the problem. The greatest fraud you can perpetrate against the American people is using their personal data and information for wealth, influence, or political power. And that is what we're hearing with the so-called DOGE initiative, as we are hearing reports that DOGE personnel remove Social Security numbers from the Social Security Administration. Now, in other times, this would be treated like the outrage it is. But fraud is so rampant that it's just a footnote to larger stories of corruption. So it's at moments like this that I cannot help but think about 12 Easters ago, when President Obama sparked a national controversy by wearing a tan suit. Now, as a presidential and political historian, I support any outrage and accountability as a healthy check on any president perceived as violating our norms. But the only thing I'm asking is that we keep that same energy that produced that tan suit outrage. When the defense secretary breaks norms and spends millions of dollars on crab legs and steaks, bring the tan suit outrage. When the DHS secretary breaks norms by spending $200 million on ads featuring herself riding a horse, bring the tan suit outrage. And when the president himself breaks norms, selling his policies on energy, AI, and healthcare to whichever corporation invests in his crypto pyramid or ballroom, bring the tan suit outrage. Let's make accountability tan again, because accountability should not be red or blue, Republican or Democrat. Our outrage should be at corruption, no matter who commits it, whether it's Biden or Trump, Bush or Obama. But let's not stop at outrage. Let us take the next steps and pursue reforms. Reforms that turn norms into ironclad law with real opportunities for accountability. Reforms governing the selection and removal of Inspector General's office and creating a process similar to that of GAO. Reforms that protect taxpayer data from the type of abuse we have seen recently. Reforms that empower Inspector General offices to investigate large-scale fraud and corruption to prevent corporations and government officials from misappropriating billions of dollars. And reforms that protect all consumer and oversight agencies, including the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the only agency dedicated to protecting Americans from being scammed by Fortune 500 companies. Because the purpose of oversight is not simply to expose corruption. It is to protect the American people from it. And if we are serious about restoring trust in government, then restoring real accountability must be our next step. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And we'll move to Mr. Hart. Thank you. You are recognized for 5 minutes of testimony.
Madam Chair Ernst, Ranking Member Markey, and distinguished senators, thank you for the invitation. It is truly an honor to testify during the Sunshine Week of our 250th anniversary. Our founders were onto something when they wrote transparency into the Constitution. We may remember from chemistry class that biological life is carbon-based. Carbon is the building block of life. Our civic life is transparency-based. Transparency is the building block of our other freedoms. That's why it appears in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7, before the Bill of Rights, because without transparency, our freedoms come apart. But secrecy can subvert sunshine. Secrecy happens in part due to human nature. Accountability is uncomfortable, and ignoring problems is easy. Fixing systemic inefficiency requires hours of unglamorous and tedious oversight work, as you all know. But it can be easier to mow the flower bed instead of pulling the weeds. But as flawed humans, the problem runs deeper. Author C.S. Lewis wrote a famous study of corruption called The Screwtape Letters, which is a dialogue between a devil, Screwtape, and his apprentice. In one famous exchange, Screwtape says, "It is funny how mortals always picture us as putting things into their minds. In reality, we do our best work by keeping things out." Government secrecy is insidious. And Lewis and philosophers and theologians through the ages have long observed that for evil to succeed, it must disguise itself as good. Now, in some blatantly authoritarian countries like Iran and Russia and China, evil doesn't need a disguise. Rulers can thwart truth and transparency by turning off the internet. But in our system, the slope to corruption is more gradual and subtle. The enemy of truth and transparency is not a pack of lies or brazen secrecy. The enemy is tribalism. Political tribalism provides the warmth of association, community, and camaraderie, all good things, but it often comes with a permission structure that allows for selective illumination, a transparency for thee, but not for me. It keeps inconvenient facts out of sight and mind. But when both tribes permit partial secrecy, we're on our way to total blindness. Tribalism is incompatible with the founders' vision of transparency. There are no Republican facts or Democrat facts or conservative facts or liberal facts. There are only facts, data, and evidence. And the recent debate about Lobstergate that one of our reports provoked is a case study. We looked at $93 billion in year-end use-it-or-lose-it spending at the Pentagon, and the left condemned Secretary Hegseth for ordering lobster while omitting the fact that previous Democrat administrations did the same thing. The right defended Hegseth for boosting troop morale with surf and turf, but they largely ignored the fact that we just spent 10 times that amount on furniture and literally 2,000 times that amount, about $50 billion in just the last 5 days of the fiscal year. And to put that in context, Israel, our close ally, spent $35 billion on defense for an entire year. We spent more in 5 days with use it or lose it. See, both sides committed sins of omission. It was hecklers versus cheerleaders. And in Washington, there's widespread collusion to not acknowledge enormous problems like use it or lose it and our unsustainable debt. So Senator Ernst, as a combat veteran, you understand troop morale and all facets of this debate. So thank you for having the courage to fix the real problem with use it or lose it with your end-of-year Fiscal Responsibility Act. So anyone who is concerned about Lobstergate should support your bill because it's a real fix. And you've been a leader in so many other areas. Your Stop Secret Spending Act would close a loophole called Other Transaction Agreements, or OTAs, that are literally concealing billions in spending. I'd call these Orwellian transaction agreements. And we've also worked together to stop $1.3 billion in going to China and Russia of taxpayer money and grants. And you've signaled your commitment to working with us and your colleagues on legislation to bring us closer to real-time transparency, which the founders would have written into the Constitution if they had access to today's technology. And I'm pleased to report that today, Representatives Josh Brecheen, a Republican from Oklahoma, and Jimmy Panetta, a Democrat from California, have introduced bipartisan legislation in the House to do just that. The Expedited Transparency Act builds on the success of Coburn Obama from 2006, which created USA Spending and put all government spending online for the first time. So in the scope of history, transparency is radical and revolutionary. State secrecy is the norm. And technologies like AI can tilt the scales in either direction. At Open the Books, we're working to create super intelligent citizens because we believe the best way to thwart a surveillance state is with a surveillance citizenry that can track government spending. So thank you again, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. And last but not least, we will go to Mr. Arkin, and you are recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Chair Ernst, Ranking Member Markey, and members of the committee, thank you so much for inviting me to speak at today's hearing. The federal government is one of the world's largest and most complex organizations, and access to quality data on the broad array of federal programs and spending is important for policymaking, oversight of federal dollars, and fostering public trust in government. My remarks today will highlight aspects of GAO's large body of work on the federal government's efforts to improve the quality, transparency, and accessibility of information on federal programs and spending, as well as challenges that require additional attention. I'll start by discussing USA Spending, which has been talked about before. It's the government's official public source of federal spending data. And over the last 2 decades, both Congress and the executive branch have taken steps to improve the quality and transparency of spending data available on the website. However, GAO continues to identify challenges that make it difficult for policymakers and the public to have access to complete and reliable data on the website. For example, not all types of federal awards are consistently reported to USA Spending. We found that federal agencies were not consistently reporting spending on other transaction agreements, which are a particular type of award that provides more flexibility than a standard contract or grant. And as an example, we identified over $77 billion in other transaction agreements that the Department of Defense awarded over the last 5 fiscal years, and that information was not reported on USA Spending. One reason why federal agencies may not consistently report other transaction agreements on the website is that federal law neither explicitly includes nor excludes them as a type of award that agencies are required to report. And we suggested that Congress amend the law to include other transaction agreements among the types of awards that agencies must report. Enacting the Stop Secret Spending Act, which Chair Ernst introduced, would be consistent with that suggestion. Next, I'll turn to improper payments, which are payments that federal agencies make that should not have been made or that were made in the incorrect amount. Improper payments have been a persistent challenge for the federal government. Agencies are required to determine which of the programs they administer are susceptible to significant improper payments and publish estimates on those programs. For example, for fiscal year 2025, federal agencies reported a total of $186 billion in improper payments. However, GAO has long reported that the improper payment estimates do not include certain programs that are susceptible to improper payments. And as a result, the total reported amount of improper payments does not represent the full extent of government-wide improper payments. Another source of publicly available information on the federal government is the Federal Program Inventory website, which OMB is required to develop and annually update. And in recent years, OMB has made progress towards developing a complete inventory. However, in a report we issued earlier this month, we found that the inventory does not yet include all programs, such as defense or foreign assistance, and it does not provide all required information, such as each program's contribution to its agency's mission and goals. We made 17 recommendations to OMB related to implementing a complete inventory and enhancing its usefulness. And finally, I will touch on our work on the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, which requires federal agencies to provide the public with access to certain government records, either by request or through what is known as proactive disclosure. We have reported that federal agencies face persistent challenges processing FOIA requests within required timeframes, and we have found weaknesses in some agencies' policies and processes to comply with proactive disclosure requirements. We've made various recommendations to address these challenges, which would help fulfill FOIA's goal of improving public access to government information and help promote principles of openness and accountability in government. This concludes my prepared remarks, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you again to all of our witnesses. We'll move into questions and answers, and I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Again, thank you all for being here today. I started my political career years ago as a county auditor in Southwest Iowa. And Mr. Hart, you bring up the issue of use it or lose it. And we battled this even at the lowest local level. We had county agencies that were out there trying to spend as much money as they could in September because they believed the Board of Supervisors wouldn't approve an increase in their budget the next year if they hadn't spent all of that money. So I know that that's what happens in the federal government. That is not the way we should operate. It is very sloppy to do it in that manner. So thank you so much for bringing that up. We can talk about that more in a little bit. But Mr. Arkin, your testimony today included the jaw-dropping news that the Pentagon, again, going back to this, spent over $77 billion on those OTAs or other transaction agreements, and that the information is not available on searchable public websites like usaspending.gov. Thanks to the great work of GAO, a bipartisan group of us in Congress introduced the Stop Secret Spending Act to ensure that OTAs are reported on usaspending.gov, just like all of the other government spending. So, Mr. Arkin, GAO found that tens of billions of dollars of Pentagon OTAs are not being included for inspection on that website. Another GAO study released last year found the Pentagon cannot assess the extent to which OTAs are delivering capabilities for warfighters. There's just simply no record available to search. Would greater tracking and transparency improve the ability to measure and improve the effectiveness of those OTAs for both taxpayers and service members?
Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. And I think I'll talk about two different things. I mentioned the legislation that's been introduced, which would require OTAs to be reported. We believe that is an important thing to improve transparency for this type of agreement or award, which is not a contract or not a grant, but still is functioning in a similar way. It's providing financial information to an non-governmental institution or organization. And secondly, what we found is these OTAs are often used for prototypes within the Department of Defense to test a new technology or product, and sometimes that can then move to the production phase. And that can also be through an OTA or a regular contract. And what DoD hadn't been tracking or hasn't been tracking is what happens, how many of those are moving to a regular production contract. And we feel like that's something that they need to do to get a sense of, are these OTAs working? Are they doing what we envision? They're designed to bring non-traditional contractors into the acquisition space for the department, but it's really hard to tell if you're not tracking it.
Checks and balances, absolutely. Thank you. And Mr. Hart, keeping with this theme of OTAs as well, how would agencies reporting tens of billions of dollars of OTAs on usaspending.gov help organizations like Open the Book shed light on wasteful spending across the federal government?
Yeah, Senator, that's an essential step. I mean, there's no reason at all for these transaction agreements to be in effect. It's a profound violation of the spirit of the Constitution. Again, in my opening statement, I talked about the founders wrote it into the Constitution that Congress should publish a regular statement of accounts, and that exists before the First Amendment. So free speech is vitally important, but we can't speak if we can't breathe. And so whenever there's a move to create a new section of spending that's secretive, regardless of who's in power, we need to stop it and call it out. And I commend you and the committee for focusing.
No, thank you. And Mr. Goodman, in 2022, 4 years ago, I authored a provision that made it into law called the COST Act, which requires SBA grantees to disclose how many federal tax dollars they used, what percentage of their costs were federal funds, and how much was financed by non-governmental sources. How will this increased transparency improve your ability to identify and stop wasteful spending?
Taxpayers have a right to know how their money is being spent, and they shouldn't need a data science degree to navigate a federal database to figure that out. And it also shouldn't take watchdogs like us to be able to give taxpayers basic information like a highway sign that says your tax dollars at work, showing you that you paid for that program. If you see a press release or a news report about monkey mind reading or octopus hypnosis, yes, that's silly science, but you also should be able to get a sense of whether that's senseless spending at your expense. And I think what the COST Act does, it gives basic transparency to taxpayers all across the spectrum who have a right to know how their money is being spent.
Wonderful. Thank you. And now I will recognize Ranking Member Markey for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Hart, I love the screw tape letters. C.S. Lewis, I just loved it. By the way, for everyone here who wasn't a freshman at Walden Catholic when I had to read it, you were probably at a Catholic school too. It's how a senior devil learns how to teach a junior devil how to corrupt humanity. So for the purposes of our discussion, that's Donald Trump as the senior devil trying to corrupt humanity. So just in February of 2025, one of his first orders was to suspend the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, suspend it, which they did. Then 6 months later, they issued the new rules, and there's a watering down of all of the requirements. What could go wrong with his family and friends roaming around the world cutting business deals, other than a watering down of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act? In fact, there's 1/3 fewer prosecutors now at the agency than there was when the senior devil took over, trying to create a climate of corruption. So even this morning, the New York Times reported that the Trump administration bypassed regular procedures to award $13 million in contracts to the company that organized Trump's destructive democracy-threatening rally on January 6th of 2021. those contracts made a minor federal contractor into the government's highest paid event planner. Seems like exactly the kind of thing that we should be looking at in Sunshine Week. New York Times has given us an agenda. Dr. Miller, how does secrecy in government decision-making create opportunities for corruption, for favoritism, or the misuse of taxpayer funds?
Yes, transparency is absolutely essential. Without transparency, Congress loses its eyes and ears into the executive branch, and the American people lose its protections from abuse. And so it's absolutely essential that the American people know what the government is doing in its name.
Yeah, so if there's one principle that everyone should know when it comes to transparency, what would you say is the one lesson this committee should draw from your testimony?
Absolutely, that government spending should be transparent, and that Congress is in control of the purse, not OMB, DOJ, or the president.
And can you elaborate upon the risk which DOJ presents to this transparency ethos which you're recommending be adopted across the government?
Yeah, just the basic functionality of DOJ was highly problematic. To get access to government data, each federal employer is required to have a security clearance. I was required to have a top secret. And so the fact that we have so many unvetted folks accessing sensitive data is actually a threat to the American people.
Yeah, and could you elaborate upon the safeguards an IG, a real IG, or other legitimate agencies would use to protect Americans' personal data, which has been compromised across our government under the Trump administration?
The first thing an IG will do, as I said, is require you to have a security clearance to access the data. Then they'll restrict the data based on the need to know, meaning you only get level of access based on its necessity for you to do your job. And then you have to follow a set of privacy rules and access control thereafter.
Yeah, so DOJ got access to the Social Security data, which is basically our lives, how much everyone earned, their age, everything. It's just pretty much an x-ray of each family. So DOJ got access to that private Social Security data. So what has it resulted in terms of DOJ's exposure of the corruption in our society?
At this point, the impact is still, unset, but we do know that it has put the American people at risk for all sorts of malfeasance.
So have they identified widespread fraud after gaining access to all of that information?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of how much DOJ has cost taxpayers? Do we have transparency on that?
Any ranges between 40 to 81 million, but those are public reports.
Wow, is that the ballpark figure from 40 to 80?
It's pretty.
I mean, that's not Fenway Park. If you're looking for a ballpark figure, that's more like Yellowstone Park. Come on, Trump administration, give us the number. Let us know. That kind of range allows for a lot of fraud. When you can't pinpoint what that number is. And if you could, what do you think should be the standards that are applying to DOJ in terms of their transparency, the ethics that should be infused into that quote-unquote agency?
From the beginning, I'm not for sure that DOJ should have been deployed into the federal agency, but now that it has, we need to just make sure we're allowing the Inspector General's office to produce oversight over their work.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Ranking Member Markey. We'll now recognize Senator Shaheen for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Markey for holding this hearing, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. Since Senator Markey raised the issue of DOJ and their effectiveness, I wanted to follow up on that because we're here to talk about the value of transparency in government spending, especially because it's a way for not only taxpayers to know what's going on, but to expose inappropriate spending. DOJ was the focus of that effort at the start of this administration. They pledged to have maximum transparency, that's a quote. And while they boasted about a lot of very large savings in their public dashboard that they said totaled $215 billion, those numbers simply aren't accurate. In fact, the 13 largest contracts on that list are all inaccurate. Can I ask each of you if you have looked at the list that DOJ has posted? And do you have any comments on the accuracy of that list and what it means when we provide inaccurate information to the public? Mr. Goodman?
Thank you, Senator. I've actually found the list to be incomplete in my searching. I've heard that projects were cut that were not on the list of cuts. I've heard that projects were still active that were on the cut list. So actually, there's been a lot of inaccurate, misleading information spread by the press, but also I think the DOGE folks who have not been forthcoming maybe don't have the ability or the tools necessary to actually track what's going on. So it has been frustrating because I think there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government and government spending. We all agree on that, I think, on this panel. And I think we have a right to know what the government's doing about it if they are slashing programs that don't deserve it, and are they getting rid of programs that we all agree do not deserve public support? So I think there absolutely needs to be more transparency about those type of decisions.
Dr. Miller?
I will follow up with you. We have a Democratic accountability team that are tracking those things, so we'll follow up.
So you don't have any assessment based on what you've seen to date?
So the assessment that we have is, as following up on what he said, is that the information that the government has provided has been inefficient or has not been a good way to be able to assess actually DOJ's activities.
Mr. Hart?
Yeah, we've looked at this very closely, and I would just say that when I worked for Senator Coburn, we talked about cutting $1 trillion in spending, and I would argue we actually did it over a long period of time. We cut spending $150 billion during sequestration, which happened in the wake of the financial crisis. He served on the Simpson-Bowles Committee. We enacted an earmark
I
moratorium.
remember the Simpson-Bowles Committee.
Yeah. Good. We're going way back.
I supported that effort.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what we got from DOJ, however.
Well, no, I think there's a long way to go. I think, and we got rid of $140 billion in savings through earmarks, and then we work with GAO to identify duplication savings. That saves $725 billion over 15 years, according to their data. So what I've seen is there's a lot to look at, and there's a lot to cut. And when you think, just to take a 50,000 foot perspective, we spend $5 trillion on healthcare in the country overall, $2 trillion through government programs. The Pete Peterson Foundation estimates maybe a quarter of that is not spent effectively. So in that area alone, there's hundreds of billions of dollars in waste. And so I wish they would have leveraged Elon Musk's star power more effectively to shine a light on the systemic problems in government inefficiency.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I sit on as ranking member on the Foreign Relations Committee, and the fact is, one of the first things they cut, as you all know, was USAID. And while I think there were some excesses in USAID, the reality is there was no transparency about the way it was cut, and there are significant implications to the results of cutting all of our foreign assistance for other countries. Since I'm almost out of time, I want to make another point because we're talking about spending. But one of the other issues we ought to be talking about with respect to Sunshine Week and transparency are policies. We are engaged right now in a war in Iran that follows a military action in Venezuela that precedes what the president is talking about with respect to action in Cuba. And we have not had one public hearing on the decision-making around the policies on this Iran war. All of the information has been classified, which means that those of us who have attended those briefings, and I know the chairwoman has attended those briefings, as has Senator Hirono, because I've been with them on some of those because we all sit on the Armed Services Committee. And yet there is nothing that I have learned in those briefings, unless it's been publicly reported, that I can tell my constituents about why we're there, what the end game is, and what we hope to accomplish. And that is a travesty in terms of the amount of money that's being spent on this war, the implications to the American public, that there has not been one public hearing. So I think for the record, that needs to be said because it's a huge oversight that does a disservice to the American people. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Hirono, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to begin by associating myself with the comments made by Senator Shaheen just now. And as we sit here today to talk about Sunshine Week, sounds good, but I question the seriousness of this effort to uh, bring sunshine into government spending. Now, basically, because we have a president who, by any measure, has been the least transparent of any president in recent history. And then we look at what happened to Doge. Why are we so focused on Doge? Because they were the people who were supposed to bring about the effort to cut waste and fraud, etc. But instead, Doge ended up costing us money, and there's very little to nothing about what Doge was doing that was transparent. And at the same time, the Doge employees, whoever these people were, whatever qualifications they had to even undertake any of the kinds of efforts that Doge was supposed to focus on, what they did with their access to millions of personnel records. And to this day, I do not know what these people did or plan to do with all of this information. And we have a president who basically engages in self-dealing, and pretty much we are not far wrong in thinking that whatever he does is intended to help himself and his family, and that is why he has made, in just the period of time in which he has held office, $4 billion. He is $4 billion richer than when he, since he took office. So when we talk about transparency, we talk about accountability. Where is the accountability in a president who engages in the kind of self-dealing that we see from this president, and the chaos in accepting a $400 million jet, in destroying half of the White House, and accepting hundreds of millions of dollars in donations and contributions from entities, many of whom are awaiting decisions relating to their businesses, their interests, by the White House. So I just feel like saying, please don't make me laugh with this effort at transparency. I do want to ask Mr. Miller one question, though. If you were to describe what Doge is up to, how would you describe Doge?
I would describe Doge as a ill-fitted attempt to reduce government spending, and a outfit that may have put taxpayer data at risk.
Well, do you think they had any kind of a blueprint or anything that guided what they were doing?
I think they were trying to move fast, fail fast, but unfortunately, I think that they put the American taxpayers' data at risk.
So would a word like chaotic efforts, would that be a pretty accurate way of describing what they were doing?
Yes, because decisions around programs should always follow certain protocols.
How about total lack of accountability? Would that describe how Doge behaved?
That is an accurate description.
Now, we have a regime that doesn't even bother to comply with court orders. Do you have any suggestions on how we can look to a regime that would actually abide by court orders? Do you have any suggestions on what we can do, what we in Congress can do to ensure accountability along those lines?
I think a long-term strategy is we have to make accountability bipartisan. Again, recognizing that we owe it to the American people to ensure that whoever is president, that they are doing the right things in their name.
Well, that would be nice. But on the other hand, we don't have that kind of apparently bipartisan goals for accountability. So short of that, is there some kind of an institutional or some change that we can make to force us to, force the administration, the regime, to comply with court orders?
I think some of the things that we could do is we could ensure that we're strengthening and protecting the Inspector General's office. They do have investigative authority and also the arrest power, so I think it's important to strengthen the institutions that we have.
Okay, that's pragmatic, because we also have a regime that got rid of a lot of the IGs.
Yes.
And that doesn't help when we want independent agencies and entities and individuals to look at what government is doing and to call attention to the lacks thereof.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I would like to be clear, as the Senate Doge caucus chair, that under the Trump administration, we have been charged with rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse. And during the pandemic, and I'll just use this as an example, and I'll focus it on the Small Business Committee, the Small Business Administration. But during the pandemic and under President Biden's administration, SBA loans were given out like candy. So let's not forget that the individuals who used Barbie dolls for their photo identification were approved for SBA loans. And that's unacceptable. It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. That should be unacceptable. And in March, it was announced that because of Doge's work at SBA, they uncovered more than 5,000 SBA loans, where equivalent to millions of dollars in those loans, where they listed the borrower as 11 years old or younger. So what I hope my Democratic colleagues aren't saying is that we should ignore the billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. Again, I don't care what administration. If there is waste, fraud, and abuse, we should be ferreting that out. But what we saw under the Biden administration, they did try to sweep it under the rug. I've been literally like Oliver on a bone with this, because we aren't trying to recollect those dollars that went out the door. I would like to see my SBA Fraud Enforcement Extension Act passed. And if it is not passed by early May, those fraudsters who defrauded and collected improper payments from this program may escape justice. But right now, that bill is being blocked by my friends across the aisle.
Madam Chair, excuse me, I don't think I used up all of my time, so if you don't mind, nobody
you
is talking
did
about
actually
hiding
use all of your time.
fraud and waste that is actually going on. And
Maisie,
you don't get to that by
Senator Hirono, you
eliminating
did
the
actually
efforts by
use
the
all of your
Department of
time.
Justice
You did
offices and
use all of your
agencies that will
time,
do
Senator
just that.
Hirono.
Thank
So the fraudsters who defrauded the federal government will get away with this if we do not enact this extension. I don't know why Democrats would block the bill when it means that we would recoup improper payments that went out to people that literally were committing fraud against the federal government and against all of you as taxpayers. So I'm going to quickly ask Mr. Arkin, if my bill is not passed by early May, they will get away with this. If the statute of limitations expires, how will that affect the government's ability to hold crooks accountable and recover any stolen cash?
Yeah, thanks for the question. If the statute of limitation expires, which it will soon, then the SBA or prosecutors will not be able to recoup that fund. They'll have to stop their work on any potential fraud that they've been investigating. And we've been supportive of that extension. So particularly for the two programs, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, or I can't remember what it's called, Operators Grant, to extend those to 10 years, as that has already happened for the PPP.
Mm-hmm.
Those are.
Yes, thank you. And I do appreciate all of the thoughts today. I think it's been a really important conversation to have everyone here and sharing the work that your organizations do. There is a lot more that we should be doing in the federal government. And again, just want to stress this. It shouldn't matter between a Democratic administration or a Republican administration. We need transparency, and we need to be accountable to our taxpayers for all of those dollars that are going out the door. So again, I want to thank you so much for being witnesses today and sharing your thoughts. I ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open for 2 weeks for members to submit questions, revise and extend their remarks, and submit additional information into the record. And without objection, so ordered. And with that, thank you all again. Happy Sunshine Week. The Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship stands adjourned.
You don't understand influence because you never.
In today's video, we have multiple Republicans coming out against funding this Iranian conflict in the amount of $200 billion. Also, TSA, they've had enough. More people are quitting, more people are calling out sick, and the excuses from Democrats will leave you stunned. And what is going on with gas prices? Well, we'll get into that during this video as well. But let's start here. Take a listen.
What's your message to TSA workers who are going without paychecks, people who are suffering in these long lines preparing to travel, who don't care about the finger pointing, who don't care about the politics? They just want Congress to get to some solution. What do you say to them? Why can't this be figured out?
We should be able to get this done today. All Speaker Johnson needs to do is bring the legislation to the floor that will pay TSA agents and reopen the parts of the Department of Homeland Security that have nothing to do with ICE and have nothing to do with Trump's extreme and violent mass deportation machine. That's all that needs to happen. And yet, House Republicans and Senate Republicans have consistently rejected paying TSA agents. Why? It's because they don't support getting ICE under control. This is their policy. It's Trump's policy. It's Stephen Miller's policy to use taxpayer dollars to brutalize or kill American citizens, as we've seen with the cold-blooded killings of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. And the American people want that to stop.
The bottom line is Kristi Noem is out, Greg Bovino out, the Minneapolis operations over with. What more else do you want? So I think there's been a lot of compromise from Republicans, including the White House. And from day one, you guys never wanted to fund TSA. You only are saying it now because obviously it's getting crazy out there at the airports. And if we want to fund TSA, let's just fund DHS as a whole. But of course, their only leverage is to hold these agencies hostage to demand reform of ICE. So it's not even a good faith argument that he's making. And this attitude from Democrats is what's continuing to lead to reports like this every single day now. This week, CNN continues to go back to the airports and say this.
Mondays, Fridays, and Saturday mornings are always busy here at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And you look back here, you can see that 120-minute wait posted there, but that's not from this part of the line. That's from the up front part of it. We've already talked to the folks who are right there. They're probably going to miss their flight already. And we've been talking to folks in this line who are preparing themselves and got here early. I want to stop real quick. And I know I talked to you guys a little earlier. Nervous about making your flight? Yes or no?
Yes.
What has this been like?
Hot and just annoying.
I heard the word stressful. What does this feel like standing in this line, knowing that you may miss your flight?
Nerves. Like, I'm just nervous and scared, we kind of want to get to where we're going, and it's like we're just waiting. We've been stationary for the last 10 minutes, like no movement.
Thank you guys for sharing. Kate, I wanted to stop real quick because this was the end of the line yesterday, and we knew it was really long. We're going to take that walk now and go this way and show you. The line stops here at the end of the atrium, and then we just keep going. Let's not forget yesterday, 38% of the workforce here called out. We're not sure what that will mean today. So you see this line that stretches on for that main checkpoint. This is not where the timer even starts for that 120 minutes. The timer for that starts way back on the other side there. So if you're standing in this part of the line, which snakes around this direction, this is more than 2 hours at this point.
Okay, so 2 days ago, it was a 90-minute wait. Today, it's now 2 hours wait just to get into the official wait time. Let's make sure you understand something. Let's say you're going through the drive-thru of Starbucks. The current wait time, as soon as you enter the drive-thru, is 26 minutes. Now, the wait time just to get to the drive-thru is 2 hours. That's essentially what he is saying. It's absolutely atrocious. If it was me, I wouldn't even be traveling right now. I mean, this is crazy.
Now they're trying to surge in as many workers as they can to help out. But as you see, when we get back to the other part of the airport, they have stacked people all the way around. And this is where it connects to the pre-check line. So you understand the pain point here for so many folks who will miss their flights. And depending on what airlines they are dealing with, some folks will be able to get rebooked. Others will have to kind of figure out if they're going to fly a different day. This is just the beginning of that rush hour. Now that it's slammed like this, it could extend a lot longer.
It will extend a lot longer because this is going to continue to drag on longer. And let me just set the groundwork so you guys understand. The Department of Homeland Security, there are some major agencies that everybody's heard of, as you know, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard, cybersecurity, by the way, ICE, Border Patrol, HSI. These are all different agencies, and there's more. Now, what Democrats are proposing is just funding TSA. They're still not talking about funding FEMA. They're still not talking about funding the Coast Guard, cyber security, and the other agencies. Just TSA. In my opinion, that's a non-starter. Just fund the whole department, folks. Now, when Chuck Schumer was asked about this, let's get his response.
Is it time to fund DHS after 4 domestic suspected terror attacks have occurred? Is it time to fully fund it? If the Republicans don't agree to the ICE reforms that you guys want, all of them, what's the next step? How long are you willing to leave DHS unfunded?
Ask the Republicans.
All right, that was his answer, and I return serve to you.
And that answer is despicable because it shouldn't even be a question at this point. As you guys know, we've been saying it this entire week. Government shutdowns should be illegal. If a shutdown does happen, nobody should be getting paid, including the members of Congress. If that doesn't work, then the airports should just shut down. In fact, I would go a step further and say anytime there's a shutdown, the entire agency that is impacted should cease to exist. It's the only level of leverage and pressure that would actually demand Congress to fix it immediately. There is no leverage at this point, even with innocent people hurting, even with innocent people having to quit and go find a new job or call out sick. That still isn't enough for Democrats to truly say, hey, you know what? I think we've made our point. Let's fund DHS and then we'll figure the other stuff out down the road. But no, let's go to a former TSA agent. Here he is sharing his story.
And this is actually, it hasn't been my second one. This is actually my 5th shutdown that I've been through. I was actually with the agency for a total of 5 years. Wow. So through those 5 years, I've been through almost 5 shutdowns. And so that actually, at the stress level, it gives you very, very hard, especially in economic ways, but even harder when it wants back to back. Emotionally, it just takes a big toll on you. So I had to sit down with my wife and we had to make the decision of like, hey, we need something stable. So I had to go job hunting. And before I actually gave my notice to TSA, I had already had something lined up. And that's what actually kind of gave me the courage to leave the agency and making sure that my well-being and the well-being of my family was taken care of.
So this episode is brought to you by Pocket Hose. This is the world's #1 expandable hose. Now, what exactly does that look like? Well, you guys could see it there on your screen. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's pocket pivot swivels 360 degrees, the full in the chat. That is the proper decision that every man must make, a decision to provide for their family, protect for their family, and then sometimes that means they have to switch careers, something more stable. And I applaud those people. I don't think anybody should be shamed for quitting, by the way, as a TSA agent or finding a new job. You got to do what you got to do. Okay, you can't sit around waiting for the government to do the right thing here. That's bottom line. Now, travelers will definitely be impacted. Their flights will be canceled, but nothing's worse as far as losing your job and not getting paid for the work that you're doing. That's the worst case scenario. So I think TSA officers, that entire organization, they should turn it around on Congress. Just shut the airports down. That's my own personal opinion. All right, so let's go to our next story here. This is the president at a ceremony today, executive orders being signed. But this story is really about the $200 billion that some Republicans are refusing to go along with as far as the Department of War and this conflict in Iran. Let's start here.
I want to begin by just saying we're doing extremely well in Iran. The difference between them and us is they had a Navy 2 weeks ago. They have no Navy anymore. It's all at the bottom of the sea. 58 ships knocked down in 2 days. And we have the greatest Navy anywhere in the world. It's not even close. So we are doing really well. We're not going to let them have nuclear weapons, because if they had them, they'd use them, and we're not going to let that happen. Should have been done a long time ago by other presidents.
All right, so that was the president earlier in a ceremony that accomplished two things. One, he signed an executive order to essentially make sure that the second Saturday in December is exclusively for the Army and Navy game. There's a 4-hour time slot. According to him, college football started to encroach on that time slot, and so I guess he wanted to sign an executive order protecting it. And he also handed out awards to multiple players from both teams. So there's that. And then, as you guys heard in that clip, he was updating the American people on how he feels about this conflict in Iran. So it sets up what we're about to get into, how some Republicans are already going against the president regarding the funding for this conflict. Listen to Representative Lauren Boebert out of Colorado. Here's what she said yesterday.
I will not vote for a war supplemental. No, I am a no. I've already told leadership I am a no on any war supplementals. I am so tired of spending money elsewhere. I am tired of the industrial war complex getting all of our hard-earned tax dollars. I have folks in Colorado who can't afford to live. We need America First policies right now, and that I'm not doing that. We need the Save America Act, FISA with warrants. There's a lot of hard lines that I have right now, and we've got to get our act together if we want to keep this majority. And the path that we're going doesn't look very promising.
Should the administration get out of Iran?
That's up to the president.
Okay, so number one, her last comment is exactly what you say. When you disagree with the president, but you don't want to make your disagreement the headline, you put it on the president. You say, it's the president's call. It's the president's judgment. That's a question for the president. Okay, it's the same thing that Tulsi Gabbard had been doing this entire week in her hearings. Secondly, going back to the $200 billion, it's not even really about the money. It's the optics of it all. When you're dealing with a Department of Defense that's already given $1 trillion, they can't pass a budget and people are struggling on the streets, and you're asking for an additional $200 billion, optically, it just doesn't look good for the average American. That is an objective reality. Now, at the same time, which brings you to point number three, our men and women may need that money. Absolutely. And we should do whatever we can to make sure that they are able to succeed in the mission that they've been given. But again, as I told you, in politics, a decision from the president can be made where on one hand, financially, it's smart, but on the other hand, optically, it doesn't look good. That's exactly what's happening with this $200 billion. And that's why Democrats are trying to hop on it as a talking point to continue to essentially root against the president and our men and women in armed forces. Let me show you an example of that. Let's go to this scumbag, John Ossoff. Here's what he said.
There also, the Department of Defense, as you well know, is asking for $200 billion with a B, dollars in order to fight this war. Where do you come down on that?
I don't know if you saw Senator Lisa Murkowski's comments today, but I suspect that a request for an open-ended blank check for indefinite combat operations with no strings attached will fail even to attract Republican support in the United States Senate.
You think it will fail?
I think that there's going to be difficulty even mustering support on the other side of the aisle for that kind of open-ended commitment.
See, on one hand, I would prefer these people in Congress to first say, hey, listen, we want our men and women in armed forces to be successful. So I am willing to vote for this, to do whatever I can to bring this conflict to a close. If they need $200 billion to wrap this up as quickly as possible, sign me up. But what I don't want to hear is them bitching, moaning, and complaining about $200 billion when these are the same people who signed off on $1 trillion budget for the Department of Defense, knowing that this department hasn't passed an audit in a very long time, knowing they also voted to fund Ukraine. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there. Doesn't mean the criticisms aren't warranted. There are people struggling on the streets today. There are plenty of programs that should get additional money than what we're sending to the Department of Defense. I think those are worthy criticisms. But we are where we are today. Men and women in our armed forces, they need the money. This conflict we're in the thick of it. There is no going back. So we got to do what we got to do at this point. I don't think this is the time to sabotage the mission because of our disagreement financially over it, if that makes sense. Now, again, when this wraps up, Congress should pass additional laws to prevent maybe something like this from happening in the future, but they won't do it. In front of the camera, it's easy for them to say, I'm not going to fund this. Yeah, no, you're not going to fund this because you disagree with it and you don't like the president. But if it was Ukraine or something like that, you'd be all in, okay? Now, to Lauren Boebert's point, which is definitely legitimate, That's why you can't expect the American people to support it. Essentially, financially, I'm talking about. Now, obviously, if you're with the president, it is what it is. You're all in on this, okay? Because you understand you're going to support his decision making. But the independents out there, the people who have no loyalty to the president, the people who are just voting on the issues, there's no way they would support $200 billion. That's just the fact of the matter. I'll prove it to you. Listen to this Republican, Lisa Murkowski, say this.
Tonight, we're seeing some cracks among Republicans on Capitol Hill over what to do if the administration does actually come to them and ask for that $200 billion and new funding for the war with Iran.
I support what's needed to ensure that the American people remain safe. So we'll see what that number is. I haven't seen the details.
I will not vote for a war supplemental. I am so tired of spending money elsewhere.
I think the original wording was around $100 billion. So we need to look at it.
Well, let's wait and see what the request amounts to.
Whatever it costs to finish this is worth it.
How much is this going to cost? To what extent is the Congress engaged in this? And the answer on most of this is, I don't know.
Now, this is the gift and curse of the Republican Party, MAGA, and what I would call true conservatives. There are points in time where we do not all agree on the same thing, especially when you're talking about money. On one hand, there are people who are like, absolutely no hesitation, pay the Department of Defense whatever they need, no question. Then there are people who are also a part of that same camp saying, hey, wait a minute, we can't just keep writing blank checks. Okay, what's going on here? And I talked about it earlier. And then there are other people who are like, listen, we shouldn't even be there to begin with. This shouldn't even be an issue. And so you have all of these ideas converging on one another. That doesn't mean there's some split, as mainstream media would like to put it. No, there's a difference of opinion, which is healthy. It's something that Democrats lack on their side of things, by the way. However, I'll let you hear it from CNN themselves. This is the way they're spinning all of this. Take a listen.
Yeah, there are a lot of cross pressures happening within the Republican Party right now. On the one hand, you have national security conservatives who are not necessarily sad that we're going and trying to be aggressive militarily in Iran. And then you have a lot of the folks, either the Rand Paul types who have for a long time been opposed to things like this, as well as some of the new voters that Trump has brought to the party who are saying, I don't know if I signed up for this. Folks like Joe Rogan, prominent podcaster, who's saying, this is not what I thought I was getting. But you also have now the fiscal element, fiscal conservatives versus those national security conservatives. And so all of this is creating a really tough situation, made only better by the fact that so many Republican voters just still really trust Donald Trump. And so that's kind of keeping the party together at this moment, that people still don't really want to cross Donald Trump.
And that's why I put it very carefully, that there's the MAGA coalition, there is the Republican Party, there are tried and true conservatives, and they don't always agree on the same thing. Obviously, if you're MAGA, you're with the president 100%. If you're conservative, half the time, you definitely disagree with the president. And if you're the Republican Party, I'm not too sure you agree with the president on much of anything. You're just tolerating him right now because he won the election. If it was up to them, he wouldn't be the president, guys. I hope we all understand that. Now, I'm going to play this clip. This was actually a week ago. Senator Murkowski, here's what she said when she was asked, is this conflict in Iran, was it a mistake? Listen to it.
Mistake to go to war?
Was it a mistake to go to war? Has it been a, I don't want to use the word mistake, but we have been dealing with an enemy in Iran that means it when they say death to America.
Okay, so bottom line is, if we left it up to Democrats, they would try to spin their way out of this. What does that mean? They're willing to give any level amount of money to Ukraine, no hesitation. When it came to Iran, their way of dealing with them was some flimsy agreement and unfreezing their assets, which essentially is giving them more money. Now, the difference here with President Trump, he's willing to physically do something. Now, by the way, this is Trump's legacy. If he's right on this, everybody wins. If he's wrong on this, then he'll have to eat it. But what I think we shouldn't be doing in public is trying to undermine the president and our men and women in armed forces. We should be rooting for their success. All right, speaking of that, because this is obviously another talking point from the media, we're getting into gas prices. That is starting to be a talking point and in opposition to this conflict in Iran. Let me show you an example of that. Watch this.
What would your message be to President Trump right now about this war?
Think about the people. Think about the people. The working class people like us. It's not just the fishermen, the truck drivers, the delivery, the shipping companies. It's got to have a major, major effect on everybody. I don't understand the goal in this one, and it's just he's definitely straying from his objective as far as the people are concerned. He pleaded to the people, make America great again. We're tearing America apart right now, and it's sad. Because it's the working class people that are suffering the most.
We know that it's becoming a talking point that the media will use, obviously, to weaponize against the president. We know that it is something that's absolutely happening. We know that it is a result of the conflict in Iran. There's no doubt about that. But what we don't know is how long will this go on? They've tried a multitude of things already. He's tried the insurance. He's tried, opening up different shipping routes. He's tried accelerating certain crude oil that was sitting at docks or ports for an extended period of time. They've tried a lot of things up to this point. But as I've said since the very beginning, and this is a known fact, crude oil, the actual price that you'll see, that will jump up and down quickly. But that doesn't mean your local gas station will react the same way. So there's a lag that ends up occurring. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, but it really doesn't matter. Bottom line is, it's an issue. Okay. No doubt about it. All right. So how should we be talking about it? I guess that is the question. Well, let's go to Scott Jennings. Here's his perception on it. Take a listen.
But Scott, you see that there's risk in a message like that. Just tell Americans, don't go to the grocery store quite as much. Don't go to Starbucks. Just suck it up for a little while.
Well, I mean, look, there's risk in everything. Every decision a president makes has risk, and none are riskier than the decision to commit troops to the theater of war, not just because of what can happen in the theater, but because of what can happen at home. Gas looks like it's $3.73 a gallon. It got somewhat higher than that during the Biden administration. It's now, we haven't gotten back to those numbers yet. But for candidates, going out and talking to people, they're in a little bit different situation than the commander in chief, who has to look at a national security situation. They have intelligence that nobody else has, and they have to make decisions knowing full well the risks that come with it. He made the call. The polling, by the way, among the Republican Party and among the MAGA friendly voters is quite clear. They trust the president on this. How long it lasts, and when we get out, we'll make a difference on that. But right now, they
MAGA
do stand right
is
behind
like
the president.
30% of the country,
and
the rest of the country does not agree.
This is the most unpopular war in American history, and for good reason. And the longer it goes on, the worse those numbers are going to look. There is no instance in history of prolonged war benefiting any nation. And how
do you know it's going to be prolonged?
We don't know it's not.
Because that's the story of pretty much every war ever.
How long did the Venezuela war last?
Well, that wasn't a war. That was but
we haven't had a war since World War II, Josh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to cut him off. The most unpopular war in American history. Man, I guess he wasn't paying attention to history. I guess he never really served, because everybody knows Vietnam is probably number one on the list. But anyways, it doesn't even matter. The point is, it is a risk. Right now, where we stand today on March 20th, it's not really a problem yet. Can be a problem if this conflict continues to drag on. I use the same analogy, although it may not be the same thing entirely. When October 7th happened with Israel, everybody was on board. But as time went on, everybody jumped off. So, again, the president legally, according to the U.S. Constitution, he has 60 days. That's really what it is. Anything past 60 days would require authorization from Congress. And if he's getting an authorization from Congress, I think that's going to be tough. That is going to be not only tough to get the authorization, but I think it will be tough to actually sell to the American people at that point. That's just my own point of view on it. All right, let's go to what the White House is doing to respond to this.
Today, the national average for a gallon of gas hit $3.91. Some states are seeing lower, like Texas and Wisconsin, but plenty of other states dealing with $4, even $5 a gallon. The White House knows people are paying attention, and they're going to great lengths today to try to reassure people this should be temporary. On Thursday, as President Trump welcomed the Prime Minister of Japan to the White House, he also confirmed reports he had spoken with the Israelis, telling them he was not happy with their attacks on Iran's energy fields.
You talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu about attacking the oil and gas fields.
Yeah, I did. I told him, don't do that.
and he won't do that. We didn't discuss. We do. We're independent. We get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something, and if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore.
Several European nations and Japan also issuing a joint statement yesterday expressing eagerness to ensure ships can travel through the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran also appears eager to work with some countries, as the Wall Street Journal reports taking back control of the strait assumed new urgency on Thursday as Iran began laying plans to allow select ships through, with Tehran's parliament considering a law to charge tolls. Republicans insist Iran's pricing power is only temporary.
The Straits of Hormuz, which have always been insecure because of Iran, are secure. So you got to look. Thank God we have a president and an administration that's focused on energy dominance. But it's going to be a much better world for energy when we get through this effort in Iran.
So you guys heard it there. Iran's response is to try to tax people for using the Strait of Hormuz. They've obviously tried to officially close it. They tried so many things to use that as a leverage point, and they've been successful overall. I mean, if you go back a couple of decades now, they've had that leverage. So in that point, that's where I really do support what's happening, because I don't want them to have that level of leverage. I don't think a country who believes in what they believe and done what they've done to American soldiers, I don't think they should ever have leverage over shipping routes and pertaining to crude oil. However, not everybody sees that. So let's go to this individual, another Democrat, in my opinion, laying out the groundwork for the enemy here. I'll just play it.
How do you feel about that? Lifting sanctions on Iranian oil when you're at war with Iran?
Well, this is just a continuation of the lack of rationale for this war in the first place. If we lift the sanctions on Iran oil, we lift the sanctions on the Russian oil as they continue to invade Ukraine, then ultimately we have to ask, what are we doing? What is the whole point of this exercise if Iran gets more funding for their ability to fight us? Russia gets more funding for their ability to fight against Ukraine and the United States and Ukraine's allies. So obviously, this is just a continuation of absolutely still lack of a justification for this war that makes any sense at all. And simultaneously, it shows the pressure that Trump and his White House are now feeling with the rise in the price of gasoline at the pump, because at $1 a gallon, every American driver is going to pay $500 more in gasoline prices at the pump this year. And by asking for $200 billion more for the war, at $2 billion a day for the war, that means he intends to keep the war going into the summer. So this is an absolute catastrophe for the administration. Lift sanctions on Iran, lift sanctions on Russia, while simultaneously having no plan to reduce the cost at the pump for the American driver.
So on one hand, you don't want him to do anything about the gas prices, but then on the other hand, you're criticizing him over the gas prices. Which one is it exactly? So the president's doing whatever they can do to fix the gas prices, to make sure they come down during this conflict. And that's really a tall challenge, by the way. I mean, it's just the reality. And Democrats run to the mainstream media and still continue to sound like they're rooting for the Iranian regime. And that means they're actually rooting against our men and women in our armed forces. Let me know if you guys see it the same way. Give me your thoughts in your comments below, especially this whole TSA situation. I mean, Democrats are just shameful at this point. As I talked about yesterday, they just continue to gaslight people around this. What do you make of that? What do you make of the president and Republicans disagreeing with the $200 billion war supplemental? Just give me everything you got in the comment section below. All right, let's go to our next video. So the DOJ has moved their case regarding the Russia.
Today, in this video, as we said we would, I want to update you on our efforts to reinstate those service members who were unjustly forced out of the military during the COVID-19 panic. While I'm proud of our efforts over the past year, our obligations to make things right are not yet complete. I'm therefore extending the application of the department's reinstatement and return to service guidance established last April. The revised guidance will now apply to former service members, our warriors of conscience, who wish to return to service through April 1st of 2027. So we're extending this to make sure anybody that wants to take advantage of it has additional time to take advantage of it. Maybe you were waiting to see whether we meant it or not. We do. We hope you'll take a look. To further encourage the return of experienced and dedicated service members, effective immediately, the active service obligation for individuals returning to service under this guidance is now reduced from 4 years to 2 years. And this change reflects our confidence that returning members will make an immediate and positive impact and aligns our reinstatement policy with the needs of both the service members and the military services. Maybe for some 4 years felt like too much given what had been done to them. We hope too entices warriors of conscience to come back. This modification will be incorporated into all future reinstatement agreements. And this policy change also applies to those service members who have already been reinstated and committed to a 4-year service obligation. So it's across the board. And given this policy modification, and to ensure that everyone whose career was cut short under the COVID-19 vaccine mandate receives the respect they deserve, I direct the secretaries of the military departments, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, within 60 days to once again recontact those who have not rejoined already and inform them of this new information and this new opportunity. We are working hard every single day. It's our commitment to you to right the wrongs and correct the injustices of the Biden administration.
Probably have it for the John. Tremendous day. We're going to Ireland. Beautiful country. Green everywhere. Strange choice for a whole country, but I respect the commitment. Very strong branding. Tremendous, actually.
Mr. President, says here, the Irish have been making whiskey since the 1400s. That's longer than America's been a country. That's the kind of dedication I can get behind.
I don't drink. Everybody knows that. But I respect 600 years of commitment. I have that same focus, just with deals and Diet Coke instead.
Sir, what exactly is the purpose of this trip? Because the briefing folder was empty except for a napkin that said, "Have fun," in Sharpie.
John, that napkin is the briefing. We're going to a pub, okay? I'm going to shake some hands, and you're going to do your Southern charm thing. And we're going to have the best St. Patrick's Day ever. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. Look at that. A rainbow. They're keeping the true roots of the rainbow here, not like the left-wing lunatics we have in America. And many people here are saying that rainbow leads to gold. And if there's gold, I should probably have it. For the country, of course. Hello, Ireland. Your favorite American president is here. And that's me, by the way. You're welcome.
Maybe ease in gentler, sir. You don't startle people who are drinking. That's day one.
John, I don't ease in. I arrive. Obama would have eased in, not me. I come through the door and the room gets better. It's a gift. It really is a tremendous gift, actually.
What'll it be, lads?
Diet Coke. The best you've got. American, if possible.
We have Guinness.
Give my friend whatever he wants. He's from Louisiana. He'll drink anything.
I'll take a Guinness World Record of whiskey and whatever that fella in the corner's having, because he looks like he's living his best life. You know, Mr. President, my granddaddy always said the Irish and the Cajuns are basically the same people. We both talk funny, drink too much, and have strong opinions about potatoes.
That's a beautiful observation, John. Very cultural. Somebody write that down. John, look who just walked in.
Top of the morning. Where's the corned beef, Jack?
He's dressed like a leprechaun who got lost at a yard sale.
Fellas, my ancestors are from here, you know? The Bidens, from County Mayo or Louth. Jill has it written down somewhere.
Joe, how did you even get here?
Someone put me on a plane and I fell asleep in D.C. and woke up here. Happens more than you'd think, pal. Last month I woke up in Portugal. Nice people, good bread.
He accidentally lands in countries and claims heritage. You're like Columbus, except you don't know where you are either. Unbelievable.
I'm serious, fellas. I feel it in my bones. The Irish thing, when I hear a fiddle, I get emotional. When I see a potato, I get emotional. When I see green, I get, I'm wearing it head to toe, so clearly something's happening.
Sir, getting emotional at potatoes is not proof of ancestry. That's just being hungry.
Right. Shut your mouths. Put your pints down. I'm only saying these questions once. I don't repeat myself. I've never repeated myself. Teams of 3, winner gets a trophy and a tab. Let's go.
Watch it, lad. I'll get my Secretary of War on the line, and it won't be pretty. Anyways, this quiz should be easy. I'm very confident we're going to win. I win everything, quite frankly. Pub quizzes, elections, negotiations, you name it. Very natural talent over here.
Question 1. What is the capital of Ireland?
Dublin. Very easy. Beautiful city. Reminds me of Manhattan, but greener and with less Trump property, which I could fix very quickly.
It is Dublin. Even the American got that one. Question 2. Who was the first president of Ireland?
I got this. It was a fella, Irish fella. Wore a hat, I think. Something. O'Brien? O'Malley? Or, no, was it Bono?
He said Bono? The rock star? Joe thinks Bono was the president of Ireland. I just want to remind everyone that this man had the nuclear codes for 4 years.
The answer is Douglas Hyde, sir, 1938.
Douglas Hyde is right. This southern fella knows his stuff. But the old lad in the green suit, Bono, mother of God. Question 3. What river runs through the city of Limerick?
The Limerick River, obviously. They named the city after the river, or the river after the city. Very basic branding. I do the same thing with my property.
It's the Shannon lad. Not even close. He came in with the confidence of a lion and the knowledge of a goldfish. I almost respect it.
Pete, he just called me a goldfish. Stand by.
Question 4. In Irish mythology, what is a leprechaun said to hide at the end of a rainbow?
Shoes. They make shoes. Little tiny shoes. Leprechauns are shoe guys. They're the cobblers of the fairy world, Jack. Come on.
The answer is gold, Joe. Gold. Even babies know this. You went with shoes in front of Ireland?
They do make shoes, though. I'm wrong about the question, but I'm right about the shoes, pal.
It's a pot of gold. But the old fella's not entirely wrong about the shoes. Leprechauns are cobblers in the mythology. He's got the spirit of a man who studied for the wrong exam but still showed up. I respect it.
I'll tell you, if this quiz was about things that almost make sense but don't quite, Biden would be undefeated. He's the world champion of the wrong neighborhood of the right answer.
Thank you, Senator. I think that that felt like a compliment wrapped in an insult, wrapped in a biscuit.
Last question for the trophy. What saint is celebrated on March 17th?
St. Patrick. I know that one. I've been waiting the whole quiz for this.
Correct. Obviously, me dead grandmother could have gotten that one. But a win's a win. Your winners tonight somehow are the Americans.
Now that's something. Haven't seen footwork like that since my cousin Boondoggle tried to dodge a gator at a family reunion.
I used to dance like this at weddings. Jill said I looked like a washing machine on the spin cycle. But people clapped. Some of them. A few clapped. Well, one guy did. Anyways.
One guy clapping at a wedding is not an endorsement, sir. That's a man trying to get you to stop.
He doesn't know a single step, and he's out there like he invented the dance. Very brave or very concerning. I'm saying both. All right, Ireland. Your favorite president's going to show you how it's done. Never done this before, but I'm very confident I'll be incredible. First try. That's how I operate.
Mr. President, I want you to know, sitting in an Irish pub on St. Patrick's Day with a president who don't drink and a former president who can't remember what he's drinking is somehow the most fun I've had since my last crawfish boil. And I don't say that lightly. The Irish know how to do it. Good music, good people, and a pub that feels like your grandmother's living room if your grandmother served whiskey.
Beautiful country, John. The Diet Coke was warm, but the energy was world class. I might buy this place. Trump's Shamrock. Gold letters.
No, please don't.
He's going to miss me. Doesn't know it yet. Half the time people don't realize they miss me until after I've left.
I'm having a great time, fellas. I don't remember most of it, but the parts I do remember are fantastic. The shoe question especially. That was my moment, Jack.
I want to do a toast. Everybody raise your glass to Ireland. Beautiful country, by the way. Very green. I love it. To the Irish people who've been putting up with rain for thousands of years. That's almost more impressive than anything I've done. Almost. To St. Patrick, who kicked the snakes out, which is what I do in Washington every day. And to the Baby News Network. Subscribe. Your favorite president demands it.
Sláinte.
Sláinte. Come on, man. Where's my beer? It was green, well, anyway.
You spilled it, Joe, during the quiz and during the jig. Very consistent of you.
Well, the spirit was there. Come on, man. Pub quiz champions. We won something. Yay. Well, I don't remember winning it, but hey, man, that's never stopped me before. Right, America? Hey, man, what's all this hullabaloo about the Strait of Horsehooves?
Joe, why do you use words like that? It makes you sound very dumb. And it's not the Strait of Horsehooves, you lunatic. It's the Strait of Hormuz, okay?
Oh, come on, man. Why does everything have to be straight with you? Why can't it be the Gay of Hormuz?
Joe, you really have lost your mind. We're not talking about the alphabet people, okay? A strait is a narrow area that connects two bodies of water.
Oh, well, what's the problem then?
The problem, Joe, is that Iran and their very deranged and pathetic new supreme leader, who apparently is a cardboard cutout, are threatening ships that are trying to pass through there, and a large percentage of the world's oil passes through there, so we've got to get it open.
Oh, well, what are you going to do about it, man?
Well, I have contacted some other countries, urging them to send forces to help secure it.
Oh, well, how's that going?
Not bad, Joe.
Listen here, Charlie. Your little whacked out prime minister is a moron, okay? He's no Winston Churchill. He's being a very bad boy, so you need to tell him to straighten up or I'm going to deport your useless son, Harry, back to England.
Oh, no, please don't do that. Nobody here in England likes Harry at all. And besides, I'm not even sure if he's mine. He looks an awful lot like Diana's personal trainer.
Yeah, well, nobody likes him over here either. His insane wife is trying to get people to eat dried up flower petals. They are very low IQ people.
Well, please, just deal with that deranged lunatic Starmer. He embarrasses us enough as it is.
So little scaredy, Starmer. Are you going to help us or not?
Please, I very much want to just not be involved. We don't want to defend ourselves or anybody else for that matter.
You know, America was once British colonies, and now we are protecting you and defending you. Maybe it's time for England to become an American colony. That seems like a nice 250th birthday present.
So it's all going to work out, Joe. And if it doesn't, well, I've got a plan for that too. Right, Petey?
Yes, sir. It's so much fun sinking these guys' battleships.
Oh, that's good, man. I seen Bill and that assassin he's married to on the TV the other day.
I seen that too, Joe, where he very dumbly pushed her into traffic. Bill, what were you thinking?
Well, Trumpy, I seen an opportunity and I took it, but I failed. So now I'm scared I'm going to end up like Epi. Hillary isn't a woman you cross very many times.
Yeah, she's a real nutcase. I'm sure you're going to be fine, Bill. You've done all kinds of very foolish things over the years, and she's kept you around for some reason.
Yeah, that's true. I miss Monica. she would have loved all these snowstorms we're having around the country.
Hey man, it is snowing a lot. It's even getting in my house. I went in Hunter's room the other day and there was all this white powder everywhere. He must have left a window open or something because it was all over the place.
That's not snow, Joe. That's all your very horrible sons. Sniffle, glitter.
Oh, come on, man.
This whole thing is unbelievable. Bill is trying to push Hillary into traffic. Joe's very pathetic and useless. Son has his powder all over the place. And crying Keir Starmer is too afraid of all the radical maniacs in his country to defend it. It's unbelievable. Before we go, we want to send a special thank you and shout out to our newest members, Mike Griffin, 2935, Michael Eschleman, 9144, Ian Schumann, DDS, John Bangert, V8I, Pamela B, 7235, Peter Pryor, 5551. Thank you all very much for your support. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like and a comment. Let me know why you think Bill was pushing Hillary into traffic. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button like you're Petey pushing the red button. And visit Pacifier Politics for more.